It's not the merciful process that hospice puts in place.
No.
Hospice is just the supportive group that
Exactly.
basically walk beside you. I'll just say, when my father-in-law went into hospice care, he had recurrent aspiration pneumonia secondary to Alzheimer's disease. And he was basically, every time he would slow, food would go down into his lungs, and give him pneumonia. You give him antibiotics, he'd get over it. A week later, he would be back in the hospital with recurrent aspiration pneumonia. And so then we decided, to put him on hospice care. I wish we'd done that so many months earlier, but, my mother-in-law was not, even though he was in an inpatient hospice unit, she was not prepared for his passing. She was not really at the point where she could agree to mentally, she was not at the point where she could say, yes, let's let this happen. And so there was, and you talked about how, hospice workers are called, and there was a hospice nurse who took her out of the room and talked to her for about 45 minutes and said, my grandfather 9 months ago was in this unit, had Alzheimer's disease, had recurrent, pneumonia because he was aspirating his food, and basically just talked her through the process, and just talked to her, and as a person who had already done this in their own family. And so that conversation from that wonderful hospice worker really prepared my mother-in-law for what was coming, and prepared her to be able to accept it and peace. Prolonging my father-in-law's life through recurrent bouts of aspiration pneumonia was not a merciful thing. It was a thing that just put him through more and more trauma, basically. And so my one of my grandmothers always called pneumonia the old person's friend, and this was probably back pre-antibiotic and things, but I'll just say that with my two grandmothers, both of them spent about 10 years in the nursing home. One of them, about the last 6 years, she was bedbound, being turned every 2 hours, was drawn into a fetal position. And we did nothing to hasten her death. We did nothing to prolong her life. That was the merciful process, and it took a long time. But we did not, but we also did nothing to prolong her life. She would not have wanted that. I know that. And I was, able to say my goodbyes to her. Our older daughter is, her middle name is Margaret for my grandma. And so, these are people that we love deeply. And we want them to be the person that they were. We want,
You froze, so I wanted to make sure you kept going.
I think that as we, these are people that we love deeply. Love deeply. Oh, and there's so much grief, and there's so much denial, because we want them to be the person that they were. They can never be that person again. And it's unfair of us to project that on them, even throughout dementia care. And this is, end of life care aside, we want our loved one to be the person that we remember them being, where they were a rational human being, where they made the decisions, where they, didn't accuse us of stealing, or didn't accuse us of, not loving them, or all of the things that people who have dementia do. Just as a course of the illness, with the illness speaking. You know, we don't want that. And so we deny, we have guilt, you know, all of the things. Well, one of the things that hospice does is to help the family process all of those emotions. You know, they have counselors, they have grief counselors. You know, for a year after your loved one's death, they are contacting you, you know, every periodically to check on you and say, how are you doing? They have grief support groups. They have all of these things that basically support you, support your loved one, you know, that support the family, and really, you know, help everybody be on board and create an environment where we can all be at peace, and our, you know, and our loved one can have a peaceful passing.
Yes, I concur. I think that, like you said, end of life, besides just end of life, I mean, there are all these different components, especially when you're dealing with Alzheimer's, or a form of dementia, all these different things in the process that that are grief related things that overshadow this whole journey. And so one of the things too, based on what you're sharing with end of life, that I get, and then you can share what you think about this in terms of your own perspective, and then what you feel from, you know, a professional perspective. Just the idea of not only wishes in the moment, but like, I was so grateful that years before my mom had a diagnosis, we had a will, we had power of attorney in place, because if you have siblings, power of attorney, I had just run into so many people that the not having a power of attorney and having that clearly defined really actually interrupts what could be a more, I don't want to say peaceful process, but
it could be, you know,
just less combative, less problematic. I mean, what would you say about some of the things that you see are needed in this process for end of life?
And I would so agree with you. You know, a will, a power of attorney, healthcare advance directive, and a healthcare power of attorney.
Yeah.
There may be, I have my old college roommate has two children, and she, you know, William and Lizzie, and she said, you know, I want William to choose my nursing home, and Lizzie's going to pay for it. You know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
you know, she knows her children, you know.
Yeah, right.
But you may have one child that, you know, would be a better person to deal with your finances, and you may have another child that might be better in dealing with end of life care, you know.
Yeah.
So know your family members. You know, there are federally funded elder law clinics around the country. Ours is, you know, at the University of Alabama Law School. So you might, you know, your state law school, you can call your state bar association and find out where those are, you know, in your state, or maybe your local bar association. But in every larger city in the country, I think there are these federally funded programs. And so, you know, they will do free power of attorney, free, you know, all of the end of life documents, any kind of thing you need to put in place as an elder.
Yes.
You know, they will put in place for you. And, you know, I think it's maybe above 60 or 62 or something like that. But, you know, our local, it's free. You can make a donation, a tax deductible donation at the end of the time when they, you know, make their.
And where are these places? I mean, what are they across the country?
They are federally funded elder law clinics. And like I said, ours is in the University of Alabama Law School. Tuscaloosa is not a large place particularly. It's 100,000 people, but we do have a major university and a law school here. And so the law clinic that covers West Alabama, about a 9 or 10 county area, is at the law school. And they, you know, they have an elder law attorney who supervises law students. You may have a law student who does your work, but they, they will come in and help you. And I'll just say, in my position as the executive director of Habitat for Humanity, we see so many, like a piece of property that we might want to buy that ends up as heir property. So, maybe great granddaddy was the last person who had clear title, and there are 42 descendants around the country. And to buy that property, we would have to get a mobile notary public to go around and say, to all of these heirs, find them, number one, but then to get, on board in terms of, what they want to do to sell or keep the property or whatever. It's just a nightmare. And so we have the University of Alabama Law Clinic come in, and with every single one of our Habitat homeowners, it's a requirement of our process that, you come and you get your will, at least a will done. And so many of the people that we deal with, are single mothers. And, the next of kin may not be the person you want caring for your children. And so that, all of a sudden that makes it like, oh gosh, if something happened to me. And we had a single mother of two who was in her very early 30s, died of breast cancer about 6 months ago. And she had a will, she had said, what do I want to happen to my kids? Who do I want to care for them?
Yeah.
All of those things she had written down, and that was so helpful to her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, I think it's something we need to kind of like the aging conversation. It's something that needs to be built into the dialogue within our communities. Be it the stigma that's attached to it or whatever it is, because it's actually something that makes things easy, not easier, but better in an odd way for the person left behind and for your loved one that's, moving on. Yeah. So this is really, I just think that we need more of this conversation, because there's so much more we can really talk about around the end of life conversation. Like if you had to choose 3 things moving forward, like that we haven't touched on yet, that are really important to you, what would they be? Because I'm thinking we need another conversation. We need to actually continue a conversation around end of life. But what would those 3 things be moving forward that people might not even think about?
Right. So I'm excited, and we're not done with this yet, so I can't talk about it because I don't know enough to talk about it, number one.
Right.
But in my position as, with Habitat for Humanity, one of the things that I've wanted to do was to design a dementia supportive house, and do, find out all of the things that we could do for very little money that would be dementia supportive, whether it's an existing house or a new home. How could you do that?
Right.
And so we are in the process of, we have a wonderful person who is one of the leading authorities in the world on environmental design for people who have dementia. And he and his architect that works with him very closely, they are redesigning one of our habitats to be dementia supportive. And a lot of it is just kind of rearranging the space. It's not something that adds cost in terms of building a habitat house. But we also are talking about, about how to take an existing home, maybe the home that we're doing repairs to, and how can we do things with color, with, with just rearranging things, with camouflage, those kinds of things that will help make, basically we have 3 goals. Number one, we want to help the person with dementia to maintain as much independence as possible.
As they can. Yeah.
Number 2, to help make the environment safer for the person who has dementia. And number 3, to help make the caregiver's life easier. Yeah. And so with those 3 goals, how can we do this as Habitat? And we are going to do a video that will basically, be publicly available to help people to know these things that they can do in their own homes, or if they're building a home, how can you do these things that will accomplish those three goals? Another thing is, how can we deal with all of the behavioral problems that, at the practical day-to-day rubber meets the road difficulties that, basically, I can't control the actions of my loved one. Can't do it. I can control my reaction.
That's right.
I can control what I say. Sometimes, mostly I try,
Yeah.
We're not perfect, but,
yes,
but the only, if I'm going to control anything, the only thing I've got control over is to a certain extent, my own actions and my own reactions.
Right.
And then, how can I change my mindset to make that relationship as it progresses ever changing? How can I make that easier, make that relationship easier, make that caring easier? How can I keep from sparking combative situations, those kinds of things? And then I would just say, how can we deal with denial and guilt? Such a part of the process.
I like those three things because they're each the dementia portion, we know what the numbers are, so we know how many people are dealing with it. And when you come to talking about behaviors and connecting versus communicate, you can communicate and it can be one way, but when you connect, it's a completely different process. But oftentimes that incontinence are two of the top reasons that people are frantically making decisions to put their loved one in another facility. And then there's even conversation we can have about that process as well.
Oh, I'd love to have that conversation.
Yes, I think I'm thinking of invaluable things that will minister and then empower and speak in people's lives with where they are right at a moment in time, that will help change people's lives, right? And so, and the project with Habitat is incredible. That could actually touch people all over the world.
I know, we're so excited about it.
That is something to be excited about there. And so I am so grateful for you.
Thank you.
I'm truly love you and Danny, and I haven't met your girls yet, but I feel like I have through Facebook. That's one of the positive things about social media. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I just look forward to all that you are imparting into the world through your work with Habitat and through these conversations that you're having, I'm sure, beyond just me and within your own family, and the sacrifice. I heard you, and I feel the sense of loss and grief losing your grandmother, correct?
Really all five, I mean, two childless great aunts, two grandmothers, and a grandfather. And then my daddy had started. So
yes. And I am standing with you because I have many grief-stricken nights over my mom. People think that you're not experiencing things because God is giving you the grace and the mercy to cope through these things, but it is hard. It is hard. There is nothing really pretty about it all the time. There are these grace moments within it, but we need each other as community. Like I said, we have people experiencing losses from COVID that are grieving, and we have a shared experience of grief. It might look different, but we need to show up for one another as a community so that people know that they're not alone. And so I just really appreciate your sharing that and really being open about the difficulty of grief. People should not feel any kind of way about going through situations like this. There's reconciliation through it, but there's pain in it. There's pain in it, and we should be able to face it. And so I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I encourage people, is there any place that people can go to learn more about, not necessarily that project, but things that could translate into their own areas with Habitat or anything, end of life care, anything that you would like to share that we could share with people?
Well, we've got our book, A Pocket Guide for the Alzheimer's Carrier.
Please get the book, people. Yeah. It is an incredible book.
It's free through Kindle.
Okay.
You can get a Kindle version for free. You can get the book online. Both of them are available through Amazon, the Kindle version and the hard, the copy.
I kind of personally like my pocket guide
I like my
hand.
Copy. Yeah,
I'm my hand.
Yeah, I like my book in my hand.
Yes,
but,
I like.
But if you're a Kindle person,
yes,
it's available free through Kindle.
Yes.
But then the I'm Still Here Foundation, that book written by John Zeisel has a lot of interior or environmental design.
I get that. I have to get that book. Yeah.
He's wonderful. And we will have things available through through Habitat for Humanity in terms of what we're doing with the design of this home. But they're not there yet. But we're in the process. We are building for a particular couple. We've started the process of, we're finalizing the designs for the home, including a wonderful foundation that is furnishing the home. High Socks for Hope Foundation. They have furnished thousands of homes all over the country. They work with veterans, and then they also with disaster victims. And so this family that we're building for, the person, the husband of the couple is a Vietnam veteran, and then they also lost everything in the tornado in March.
Wow.
And so yeah, so but the color of the placement of the furniture, we're working on that so that that even facilitates the ability of the home environment to support your loved one. And that's what we're hoping.
Thank you. I just want to
love you.
I love you too. And I just want to, I feel the need to just very quickly, say a prayer over you and all of us out here who are dealing with the grief of a loved one, and to just be assured that God is with us in our time of grief, that He is bringing us through it, that you don't get over it, but you move through it. And He is such a good God that we do get to a place where the intensity of the grief doesn't feel the same, but it doesn't make us miss the person any less. And so I'm just sending prayers for every single person out there who is losing or has lost a loved one unexpected, the people that lost people that are anxiously praying for some remnant of their loved one in the building that collapsed. Just everything in me, in my heart, just wants to reach out to people in this moment that have experienced loss unexpectedly or are going through it, and to just assure you that God is still God and you will move through this. And I'm just praying for people to end up with a community of support that they never imagined through the process. We need that, and we need each other. So thank you so much, Ms. Ellen.
Thank you.
And I look forward to talking to you again. I love you. Tell Danny I said hi, and the girls, and Heidi, and we will talk again soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.